Vanessa Garinger. We knew that levees.org had spearheaded and gotten a plaque installed at the breach in Lakeview. We knew they had done the same at the London Avenue breach, and we were thrilled that they actually reached out to our community in an effort to make sure that we were included in making sure our voices were being heard, and that there would be something in our community that reminded us for generations to come what really happened here. It is a constant daily battle around numbers, demographics, folks that lived here, folks that didn't survive the storm. And it's been used, it's been used against us in many respects. The numbers, again, the numbers that the city have used, the numbers that the politicians have used to exclude us from recovery is a hurtful thing. So it was important, if it was going to be on a plaque, it's something that is permanent. We needed not only the folks here in the community to be able to look at those numbers and be sure that they were correct, but we needed the public, the visiting public that would come here to understand the number of people that lived here, the number of people who lost their lives, and what they went through. It's very, very important. When we came back after the storm, a lot of my colleagues felt that we were going to be 5 years out from recovery. I said we were going to be 15 years out. And sadly, when I look around my community, I still see those numbers being correct, that it'd be 15 years out. There is still a lot of work to be done here. There is still a lot of fighting to be done here to make us whole again. But fortunate for this community, many of us who were not activists before the storm, eyes were opened by this event. And because of it, we are more engaged. We are more focused on the quality of life for this community and for the children and the generations that are going to grow up here. It is our mission, and it will continue to be our mission until we feel that we have been made totally whole again.
Willie Lee Calhoun Jr. What I think Levy.org brought to the community was something that made them made me realize that, we need to commemorate what happened here. We had the worst natural and man-made disaster at one time that ever hit anywhere in the United States. What was ironic was that 50 years ago, when we had Betsy hit here, September the 9th made 50 years, that there wasn't any commemoration, there wasn't anything to say what happened here 50 years ago. And to look at where Levy.org brought the celebration to, and I don't like to use the word celebration, but brought us to a level to remember just what happened and at what point it happened. No, I didn't envision that. The Lower Ninth Ward is the only place where houses move. So the force of the water that came through that levee, it should tell you a lot about what actually happened down here. You got to remember, this levee broke 50 years ago, almost in the same spot. I mean, there's so many people we could fault, but it was a failure that went on for over 50 years, because when the levees broke in 1965, they knew then that they needed to be built better. For whatever reason, they didn't build them any better. So I think what your mission and goals have been is to make people aware of what happened at what spot. and what really happened. So given that, yes, I think it's great that we can always go back and see what happened.
My name is Susan Levine. We had this terrible, fatal flood. I lost my house. People died. I got joined up with levees.org. I've always been a person to write letters to the editor of the newspaper, and this was perfect for me, sitting in my FEMA trailer, tapping on my laptop. Letters to the Los Angeles Times, letters to the Washington Post, wherever I saw somebody mentioned, and I can't remember, Pennsylvania, that we should all leave, that we shouldn't go back home. And I wrote a long letter to them, and to this day, I'm still on my soapbox. Presently, we get an email, and we're shown a publication, whether in a newspaper, magazine, where somebody has said that New Orleans was devastated by Katrina in 2005. Now, Sandy so brilliantly named this Katrina shorthand. And so we started writing letters to all of these. I got a letter published in the Baton Rouge Advocate, Los Angeles Times, because really, basically, there was not much to do in the FEMA trailer but sit at the table and write letters. The media is what I really don't understand. They should know what happened, but as long as everybody calls it Katrina, the Army Corps of Engineers will never be held accountable. Because let's put the blame on Katrina. So I continue to write letters. And thanks to levees.org, we have been able to do this. All these years, we keep trying. We're never going to back down.
I am Deirdre Bowling. Before Katrina hit, I evacuated with my family to Stone Mountain, Georgia, and I was only there a couple of days before Sandy reached out and we started talking, and she, at the time, was saying, I don't understand this. This shouldn't have happened. Something went wrong. And that she was going to pursue this. I know she was working with her son, Stanford, and they were going to see what they could find out. And it wasn't long after that before they had formed levees.org. They started pursuing it, and they started realizing that the Army Corps of Engineers had done some things that weren't right, and that something had to be done. People needed to know about this. And the first event I remember, she held a rally out by the Army Corps of Engineer building, and she had placards, and there was a good number of people out there to express their outrage that this shouldn't have happened in a major American city. People were so happy to get together to just be able to like talk about this stuff, because you felt so isolated after Katrina, especially if you were evacuated somewhere else, and just being able to come together and express outrage and be given some genuine things to do, it felt really good. You felt like you were helping to make this situation better, even as awful as it was. There was a situation recently with the Advocate. They had slipped back into just using Katrina shorthand, and she again had folks reaching out saying, no, don't let this stand. They need to remember that this was an engineering failure. Because if we let it alone, if we had allowed that to be the narrative, that's what would go into the history books. Levees are an issue not just in Louisiana, but all over the country. I mean, it wasn't too long after that we saw there with Hurricane Super Sandy. I know Hoboken was one of the cities she had indicated that was in danger, and sure enough, Hoboken flooded during that storm. One of the quotes that I lived by was, I always thought someone should do something about that. Then I realized I was someone.
Mary Dwyer. Got a phone call from Sandy after speaking to a friend who said that Sandy may have needed some help doing some work on the webpage. And it was during COVID, 2020. So I'd never met Sandy in person, and we spoke on the phone a few times and then met via Zoom a few times. And then about a year later, I met Sandy in person, but we continued to work together since then, since 2020. And we'll continue to work with Sandy as long as I can. Sandy wanted to hire me. I never sent her an invoice because I felt like I just needed to do this as a volunteer and enjoy doing it, and learned a lot along the way, actually, because I wasn't really into tech. I am an environmental educator by trade and had been working on a long-term biological monitoring program in New Mexico when I moved back to New Orleans. Had kids, got busy. So I really wanted to get back into something, and Sandy was kind of that entryway back into helping with the environment. It's extremely important to me. I was born and raised in New Orleans, so this is my hometown. These are my people. My homes that I grew up in are still here, and the city is very important to me. So moving away, I really didn't think I was ever going to come back until my husband got a job back here and we decided to move back. Learning the things that I've learned technology-wise, building websites, editing Wikipedia pages, editing websites are all things that help me grow as a person as well. I feel it's important to get the truth out there, and I feel that's what Sandy's doing. We need to consistently work on getting the truth out there and building that narrative that this wasn't a natural disaster, that it was a man-made disaster, and the truth always needs to be known.
My name is Bernell Cotlin. Having a grocery store, everybody come to that place. Some people come to shop, some people come to vent. And I hear every day, some people don't like the fact that people come down to the lower ninth ward because they feel they're being made fun at and poked at and looked at and gawked on. Now, the other side to that coin, this is the side that I'm on, I'm all for it. I think everybody needs to come down to the lower ninth ward and see what's going on. They need to see that plaque. They need to read those words on both sides of the plaque. The world needs to see this here. I don't believe that they're coming to make fun of us down here. I live here in the lower ninth ward. They are curious. There's nowhere else in the modern history where a city went underwater. 80% of a city went underwater. So people are curious. And everybody needs to see that plaque. Everybody needs to come see the lower ninth ward. I welcome the whole world to come and see it. Katrina happened 10 years ago. Everywhere else, you have monuments, you have plaques, you have revitalization, except in the lower ninth ward. For whatever reason, it doesn't matter, but whatever reason, everything's just at a standstill in the lower ninth ward. That's why that plaque means so much. This is my neighborhood, and you have to care about your neighborhood. Nobody else is doing it. It could be about money, it could be about race, it doesn't matter. It's home. And what you do with home, you have to take care of home, and I believe in that. And that's why I did the grocery store. Next, I'm working on a laundry room. After that, I'm gonna do a nursery. If nobody else is gonna rebuild a ninth ward, I'm gonna do it. And that's why it's so important what you're doing with this plaque, because you care. I just wanna tell you thank you for all of your work, because I know it was hard. You didn't have to do this here. You could have been doing 1,001 other things, but you care. And so me personally, whether it means anything to you, I just wanna tell you thank you. And as far as anybody else that can see this here, come to the lower ninth ward. Come and see the plaque. Come and just see the ninth ward, and continue to just come to the ninth ward. Come and see us.
My name is Kim Ford. I think the citizens of the lower ninth ward were the critical piece and the willingness all on one accord to make this happen. And I believe then, I believe before then, and I believe right now that when we as a community are all together on the same page, we are invincible. And I felt that with this plaque project, that we wanted it to happen and it was going to happen. And we talked about that amongst ourselves, that we feel like the community wants this and we feel like it's going to happen. And you see, for me, the dedication was wonderful for me, but that really wasn't it really was just a formality for me. It was just a formality because that's my life every day. Those conversations that people were having, I lived that every day. So it really, and I was glad to be there, and I'm honored that I was there. I'm honored that I got a chance to say a few words even. I'm happy for all the people that were able to come forward and have some public acknowledgement of the plaque, you know. But my joy and happiness happened long before then, when I knew that I was elated, like when I found out that finally we've got language that we can agree on. Everybody signed off on it. You know, it was, the plaque has been printed. The perseverance of Sandy Rosenthal to just not let anything shake her. And she just stuck to it, and she helped us to keep stuck to it as well. And and that was a key component as well. The tone with which she talked to my neighbors and I, the compassion that she had to see it done. That's important, and I appreciate that. And there's no words that I can say to thank her.
Jan Hershey. I joined levees.org immediately because I was grateful for what they offered, you know, and I was just so grateful for the work she was doing, and is still doing to some degree, because she just wanted to find out what the truth was about why our levee system failed, and she did. I was a victim of the flood, the levee's failure. It was, you know, I had about 3 feet of water in my house, and you know, I got back in relatively soon after the ordeal, but it was a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of decisions to be made. I had to get an apartment and move with my dogs, and anyway, that was like one of the worst periods of my life. It was just so difficult. I liken it to a vase falling and shattering into a bunch of pieces, and you just go around picking up the pieces, trying to glue it all back together, and it takes a long time, and it's very difficult. If I had to sum up in 2 words what levees.org means to me, it's truth seekers. They dug for the truth, they found it, and we found out that the devastation was man-made, not just God-given. It was man-made. Our levees were not built correctly, and many people had to pay the price of that. Oh, Cindy's a breeze to work with. She's enthusiastic, helpful, very positive. She's persevered. She's very tenacious. And I admire that. You know, that's what got things done. She got to the bottom of the problem, isolated the problem, and tried to fix it the best she could. Let's figure out what went wrong. Why did the levees fail? And that's relevant now, and it's going to remain that way.
My name's Melissa Smith. When the levees breached, we lost everything we owned. Once we moved back to New Orleans, I wanted to volunteer. I have a background in community organizing and advocacy. I'm the one who now tracks how New Orleans and the levees and Hurricane Katrina are represented both in the local and national media. And basically what I do 6 days a week, I look at every article that mentions New Orleans, the levee system, or Hurricane Katrina. When I see something that does not jive with what actually happened, I tap into our volunteer base and ask them to write a letter to the editor. We've been able to change how the Times-Picayune represents New Orleanians and Katrina in the media, all the way up to the Associated Press. So one of the issues we started to see very early on was that anywhere from locals all the way up to Congress started blaming New Orleanians for what happened in New Orleans. We must tell these editors to stop using Katrina as shorthand for what exactly took place. They need to be able to explain to their readers these complex issues because it affected everyone, not just in New Orleans, but in the state of Louisiana. And so one thing we were trying to convince people around the country who really questioned why New Orleans should be rebuilt, it ended up being for a number of reasons. Obviously, New Orleans is a major port city. We feed the breadbasket of our country, and we receive the goods from the breadbasket of our country so they can make money as we send things out to sea. Also, if it can happen here, it's going to happen anywhere. That's also one thing we try to remind folks is that you may look at New Orleans as a poor black city. That's not, that we deserved what happened to us and that, we only care about a good time. That's not the case. We have people who are completely dedicated to making sure that, again, these lives are not lost and that those 1,400 who died, that their lives weren't in vain. It's like a death, and you have to learn how to live with it. To this day, I will go look for a book, and I'm like, Katrina, federal flood. I don't have that book anymore. So even 20 years later, I'm still being reminded of things that I thought I might still have, but that are completely missing.
My name is Stuart Loeb. I do have broad interests. My background is in engineering, and when the levees failed and I was forced to evacuate and leave the city, and in the subsequent weeks and months during the media coverage of what was going on, I perceived a definite disconnect between what I knew as a local resident, someone who had sort of generally followed the progress of levee construction, building, the 1965 act, or the act that followed 1965 with Hurricane Betsy from Congress to reinforce the levee structures, all of that, something wasn't connecting. And I found levees.org online. I joined it as a member. Information in the general broad media, they tend to pull information from the same press releases and sources, and it's often incorrect. The first problem is referring to the event as a natural disaster. It was not a natural disaster. When it came to the flooding of 2005 and the events around that, the Corps of Engineers, the levees, levees.org, it was the first time that I was involved in Wikipedia material that was actively being contested by other agents, people without names, just IP addresses, people coming in to make these random anonymous edits that were just wrong. So I was correcting those, and I was also making sure that everything I did was substantiated along the Wikipedia rules so that it was not things that I was making up, it was not personal opinion. These are substantiated by articles, papers, established sources, so that we would get the record as correct as we could in Wikipedia, and by and large, we've been successful. So there's definite improvement in the system, and there are many more eyes on it than there were in 2005. The levee protection system that we have today is an order of magnitude better than what we had in 2005, both in its construction and its oversight and in its maintenance.
I'm Robert Green. We're here in the lower Ninth Ward. That was the most important thing about this is we came together and finally put up something that we all wanted. We were reached out to by levees.org and said we want to help. So it's an effort that levees.org really instituted, instigated, and put before us, and we realized that that was what we needed. So I wanted to make sure that we understand that it wasn't our initiative only. Had it not been for you and your efforts to come to us, then this wouldn't have happened. So you basically opened the door for us and made it possible for us to have something that we really need to have. Had it not been for Sandy realizing that she had to get some people behind her, and to be perfectly honest, Sandy, I got behind Sandy like I got behind Brad Pitt. I stood up day one and said I'm for it. One, because I had a history and nobody knew that history that you helped me with. So that's why I knew there was nothing bad about anything you ever want to do. You always fight for us, and you always fight for great causes. We had people who just didn't want to just let anybody come through here, but you weren't anybody. You were somebody who had been fighting from us from the beginning. If you had just picked up the plaque and said, I'm going to put a plaque over there, and you hadn't done the work that levees.org did, that Sandy did, that your son did in the very beginning, I don't think I would be the activist that I am right now. The importance really comes from the simple fact of the matter that it goes on the National Register. It'll be something you can Google. It'll be something that'll be around forever. It'll be a part of history as to what Katrina was, an event that changed history. We even seen somebody put flowers out there. It's becoming a point of interest like we wanted it to be, a point to let people know that this is significant. This neighborhood is significant. That action that happened on August 29, 2005 was significant, and that plaque makes it exactly significant.
My name is Gloria DeQueer, the president of Fillmore Gardens Neighborhood Association. The waters from the breach of the London Avenue Canal and the 17th Street Canal started flooding the area, and it happened very quickly, caught everyone by surprise. So I had an opportunity to meet Sandy Rosenthal, and I learned that she was the founder and director of levees.org. So we thought that was a good opportunity to partnership with her to see how we can commemorate the devastation of the storm and what caused it. She shared with me that she was able to purchase or make an agreement with the New Orleans Redevelopment Authority to take one of the homes that was completely destroyed, but the structure still stood, and decided that that would be a great location to put the flood museum so that people can see actually what the homes in the area looked like when the flood waters rose. Sandy was very collaborative, she was very professional, and she was very compassionate about the vision and the mission that she had already put together in order to help rebuild our community. And we were very excited about that. We trusted her professionalism, and we knew that she would do whatever is best that's going to work for the community so that the community can begin to heal and to move forward. We decided to come together and we just put our hands to the plow and said, this is what we're going to do, without any fear or reservation. And so she instilled in us the confidence and the boldness to go before the leadership in the city to start beginning to process and rebuild our community so that we can come back.
My name is Laura Paul. Lower9.org is a long-term disaster recovery organization that was founded after Hurricane Katrina. Lower9.org decided that for us, the thing that made the most sense was to hunker down in the Lower Ninth Ward, where 100% of the homes were rendered uninhabitable by the levee breach in 2005. Wanted to see about restoring as much Black home ownership to our neighborhood as we could. We are so grateful to Sandy and to levees.org for handling the heavy lift of dealing with the Army Corps of Engineers, dealing with public information, and making sure that the public is informed about important issues surrounding levees. Lower9.org is boots to the ground, volunteer-driven work rebuilding community, and the two mesh incredibly well and support one another, and it's just been a really delightful partnership. The historic marker was something that levees.org undertook with a great deal of community engagement and interaction, which is incredibly important. Sandy came to the neighborhood and said, what should this plaque say? How should this plaque be worded? We went back and forth, design issues and language issues, but the whole community was engaged in the process, which is incredibly, incredibly important. And the fact that levees.org was sensitive to that and was respectful of that is amazing. It's a beautiful marker. It exists. It actually sits almost directly opposite our headquarters, and it's just an amazing place for people to stop, become just a little bit educated about what happened, and then do further research. And I think that one of the things that has affected our community and its recovery so deeply is the fact that it was and remains a low-wealth Black neighborhood in the South in the United States. And while other neighborhoods and other communities have recovered more quickly and more completely, at this moment, the true population return of the lower Ninth Ward is probably about 25%. And that's staggeringly low compared to other communities in our city. And that needs to be worked on, and we're working on it, and we're trying, but it is not a short-term issue. It is a long-term issue. We're coming up on 20 years of recovery from the levee breaches in the lower Ninth Ward, and lower9.org isn't going anywhere anytime soon, and we are not running out of work, let me tell you.
Sandra Stokes. I'm chair of advocacy for Louisiana Landmark Society. The society was very supportive of getting the permit for the museum house. I've been doing advocacy for over 20 years in New Orleans, ever since Katrina. And levees.org changed the dialogue. They changed it from Katrina flooded New Orleans to the levee failure flooded New Orleans. And it's an ongoing battle we have to constantly monitor the engineering in the city. As an advocate for Louisiana Landmark Society and other organizations, it's an ongoing battle. I was part of a team that was fighting a different narrative, another misleading narrative that Charity Hospital had to be demolished because it wasn't structurally sound. And our study showed that it was structurally sound and it could be saved. It's still standing today because of that. And the same thing happened with levees.org. It was that the world knows it as Katrina flooded New Orleans, but that's not the truth. The truth is that the failures of the federal system flooded New Orleans. I just came from a meeting where we're fighting the Corps of Engineers on moving a lock 12 blocks further into the city, and they're assuring us that everything's going to be okay. Well, after what we've learned from what's happened here, we're not so sure that we can trust the Corps of Engineers and their narrative anymore. So we need to question everything that's going on. It is because of the truth finding of levees.org that we now are much more cautious. And at this meeting I just came from, every person who got up said, we don't trust the Corps, we don't trust you, straight to their faces. You have sovereign immunity, so you have no responsibility and we have to share the disaster alone. And why should we trust you on other projects?